A 100 pop punk bands tier list. Let's get right into it. Alright, I have Photoshop open because that was the easiest way that I could think of how to do this because, again, we're talking about 100 bands. So the questions that you might have, how'd you get these 100 bands? Well, that was pretty much the easy part. I looked at a bunch of lists and articles about the 50 best pop punk bands of all time, the 100 best pop punk albums of all time, and then I chose those bands. I threw in some underrated bands as well, and then to spice it up, I threw in some more modern and more up-and-coming bands in the list as well. And before I get any questions about it, C is average. And I always hate when people do or they rank something like 1 out of 10, and what do they always give it? They give it a 7, when they really mean a 5, because 5 is the average, but they always say 7 as like, oh, it's kind of good, it's kind of bad. Well, that's not a 7. 7 would be that you really liked it. So for me, again, C is average. I like some of the songs, I don't like the other songs. C is average. So since we have 100 bands to get to, I won't talk in depth about every single band. I'll play some songs throughout the video as well. And then for what's actually going to go on the tier list, I have a mix of band logos and album logos just to kind of switch everything up and, spice it up a little bit. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this pop punk tier list with 100 bands. I don't know if I said it or not, but the list is going to be in alphabetical order. I'll have it in the description or in the comments or something like that. So the first band that we're starting with is The Academy Is. And for me, The Academy Is one of those bands that I don't really go back to often too much. I like some songs, don't like other songs, so I'll probably slot them right here in with C. The next band is Acceptance, and everybody always talks about this album, Phantoms, and the song Contagious or So Contagious, and I saw this album on a lot of best pop punk albums of all time lists. To me, the band never really did anything for me. I do like the Contagious song, I listen to that from time to time, but I think that one might be, because C, I don't want to put it at C, because I really don't listen to the band that often at all, so I'm gonna slot them in as D, and normally I'm pretty nice, so I don't know how many Fs, but we kind of have to get one F throughout this 100 bands list, right? A Day to Remember. I have fond memories of A Day to Remember, and when What Separates Me From You came out, that was a great album, so I'm going to put that as B right here. I mean, I remember when All I Want came out, and it took over my scene of anybody who remotely liked alternative music. When that song came out, at least again in my friend group and my friend circle at the time, that song was everywhere. I remember the crustiest of crust punks even liked that song. If you're a longtime subscriber and watcher of the channel, you know that I love Alkaline Trio. I think Alkaline Trio, I don't want to say that they're underrated at all because I think they're, properly rated, but maybe a little bit underrated in the sense of are they one of the best punk rock bands of all time? And in my opinion, yeah, I think their newest album, Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs is great. It might be the punk album of the year in 2024. I mean, so many of their songs are great. They're catchy, infectious. I don't know how you couldn't like Alkaline Trio. Next up, we have the All-American Rejects. I remember when, I think Move Along was the first song that hit, at least when it got to my circle of friends. I'm a little bit on the younger side, so I remember Move Along. It wasn't Dirty Little Secret, which obviously I know is a super popular song, but Move Along was the band that, or the song that really kind of galvanized everybody in my age group, at least when it came out. My favorite song from the band is probably Gives You Hell. I like Some Days Gone Now. That's one of the more, probably not one of the more recent songs now, but recent in the All-American Rejects catalog. Yeah, I think I go with B. I think All-American Rejects at B. I feel like that's a proper rating. I think most people would probably slot them in as B as well. Next up is Allister. Now, this one is near and dear to my heart. I am from Chicago, and if you know anything about Allister, you know the one song that is so synonymous with Allister. And don't worry, we'll get to it in a second, but I think even besides the Last Stop Suburbia album, I think people really underrate Allister and think they're either a one-hit wonder with Somewhere Down on Fullerton or just listen to this album, but they have a lot of other really good songs as well if you like that kind of super fast-paced pop punk. And even their most recent album, which again probably not recent as of now, but is still a good pop punk, and they're still out there making music.
Someone down on Fullerton, there's a place we used to go to get away from it all. Oh, please don't go away. While this feeling stay with me forever.
All Time Low is a band that I never really got into. I don't know what it is. I remember when they were blowing up when I was younger, and everybody was like, you gotta listen to All Time Low, you gotta listen to All Time Low, but I'm gonna slot them in at D. I never really got into them. I do love the song Weightless. Maybe it's not my weekend, but it's gonna be my year. Is a top tier. That lyric is like an S as far as pop punk lyrics go. I always loved that lyric. So that song meant a lot to me when I was listening to All Time Low in high school, but everything else never really got into the band. So I'm not even gonna put them at C, because when I listen to All Time Low, it's pretty much Weightless and like nothing else. A Loss for Words, I love this band, one of the most underrated bands in the 2010 scene, and I know a lot of you are saying, I've never even heard of this band, how are you slotting them in A? Don't worry, we'll fix that in a second, but out of all the bands that came out of the emo and pop punk revival of the 2010s, there were so many great bands that came out of that scene that naturally some great bands were just going to fly under the radar, and I think A Loss for Words is one of them. So even if you do know who A Loss for Words is, me picking this song, which I feel like some people might think is like a deep cut, again, if you're like a diehard fan of A Loss for Words, but I always liked this song, and out of like all of the songs in A Loss for Words, catalog, I think this one is catchy enough, it's infectious enough, and, anybody like a casual fan of pop punk could really get into this band. I always thought the singer had a great voice. I mean, how many pop punk bands can do an entire cover album of Motown songs and not get, like, laughed out of the building? And A Loss for Words did that.
You had me thinking that I was the one with your heart all this time. You thought you were never mine. You really had me thinking, you really had me thinking, yeah.
The Ataris, a band I never really got into that much. Boys of Summer, one of the best covers probably of all time. I'm going to put them, I do listen to them more than Acceptance and A Loss for Words. So yeah, I am going to put them in C. What's the other song? San Dimas High School Reunion or Rival or whatever that song is. That's a catchy one as well. So I'll put them in C, a band that I listen to, from time to time, but not all the time. Next up is Avril Lavigine. And God, Avril Lavigine has been, I had an older sister, so Avril Lavigine was always like around me. And when I really started getting into more, punk rock and more emo and stuff like that, I feel like people made fun of Avril Lavigne as being like an industry plant or something like that. But when you go in and listen to a lot of the Avril Lavigne songs, they are great. So I'll put Avril Lavigne here at B. I'm not going to pretend I listen to Avril all the time, but, I like a lot more Avril songs than I don't like. Who's next? Bayside. Bayside, I think, is one of the most underrated bands in the entire scene. I feel like a lot of people with these legacy bands almost like dismiss their newer stuff because they have nostalgic memories attached to the band. So, whether it's their first album, their second album, maybe like their third album, but I think every album, Bayside has literally gotten better. I think all of their albums, was it Call to Vacancy? Bayside is great. I'm going to put them at A. I love Bayside, and I'm a guy who likes a lot of the newer Bayside stuff than some of the older stuff. Some of the older stuff is too long. It's almost too emo for me. When Bayside like turns up the pop punk and makes it, really fast and intense, I am all in. Bayside, one of the most underrated bands in the scene, in my opinion. And then we have a juggernaut in Blink-182. It's S tier. I can't, what do you want me to say? Blink-182 is the most popular and the best pop punk band of all time. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. Yeah, I'm going to go with it. Yeah, I don't think it, to me in my head right now, it's a Green Day or Blink-182, just so you know, but it's Blink-182. What's my hot take with Blink-182? Oh, I'll say that Wendy Clear is one of the best deep cuts from Blink-182. The Bombpops. The Bombpops are an interesting band and an interesting story. For me, they're going to go with B. I think the Bombpops, they had a lot of chances to be that next big band. They were on Fat Wreck. They had, I think the song that I'm going to play, California in July, has like over 1 million views. They do great on Spotify, but it feels like the scene they're never, like Bombpops never had a lot of traction behind them, which is really weird because they have so many good songs and so many good albums. Yeah, like I said, 3 million views. So if you haven't checked out the Bombpops and you like that Fat Wreck style of pop punk, I mean, this is going to be like your new favorite band. The Bouncing Souls, a band that's been around for a really, really long time, and I feel like they don't get like the respect that a lot of the other bands from that era kind of have. I feel like people are like, yeah, like the Lost for Words, they have some good songs, they have, you know, some bad songs, and I feel like that's the kind of general consensus. But if you're a band that's been around for that long and you put out so much music, like, I think people forget that the majority of the Bouncing Souls music is great and not like good, like it is great. So yeah, I'm gonna put Bouncing Souls at B. That's funny, Bombpops and Bouncing Souls both at B. Who's next? Bowling for Soup. I don't have any hot takes with Bowling for Soup. They kind of give you exactly what you want. When I'm in a mood to listen to Bowling for Soup, that's when I put it on. I really like their song Almost. I feel like that's, yeah, I know 1985, High School Never Ends, but I really like Almost. What do we have? Boys Like Girls. D. I'm honestly thinking about F, with The Great Escape. Like, I don't think I can put him at F. I don't even know why E. I mean, I don't know. No, yeah, I'll put him at D. I mean, The Great Escape. And I actually think their new album, whatever it's called, they have a song that has like sugar in the title, and that's not bad. And I think I only listened to it all the way through once, so I don't want to say I have too many opinions on it, but I remember it not being as bad as I thought. But I'm saying that as a compliment. I'm not saying that to be funny or be mean for no reason. The Buzzcoks, if you're in conversation to be the first pop punk band, I think you deserve to be slotted here in C. I'm not going to pretend that I'm the biggest fan of the Buzzcocks. Never Fallen in Love is a great song, but yeah, I mean, they kind of get grandfathered into C because it's either them or a band that we're going to talk about later on that you already probably know as the first pop punk band. So come on, I don't think I can put them any lower than C. I don't think that'd really be fair. Crucial Dudes, I went out of order, but that's okay. So Crucial Dudes, 61 Pen, probably with me as well, with A Loss for Words as one of the most underrated bands from the 2010 scene. If you like Latterman, who, do I even have Latterman on this list? I better. They're probably coming up later. Well, obviously they're coming up later. But the Crucial Dudes, 61 Pen, if you like Latterman and you haven't listened to any Crucial Dudes, you have to. 61 Pen from front to back didn't sound like any of the other pop punk bands that came out in the 2010s, and a lot of the newer, or I guess most recent, a lot of the stuff that Crucial Dudes did right before they broke up, I think was some of their best stuff. 5.9. They went like, it wasn't all like generic pop punk songs about girls and breakups and all that stuff. Like they kind of started talking about like politics and the real world and stuff like that. And I really wish that Crucial Dudes hadn't broken up, because I think there was such a bright future for the band, excuse me. Cartel. Now, I feel like Cartel, and specifically Chroma, at a certain point were underrated, but everybody like has now acknowledged that Cartel and Chroma has been underrated for so long, and it's actually a fantastic album that I can't really, like, saying that Cartel is an underrated pop punk band doesn't really make sense anymore. So I'm going to put them in B. This is one of the best pop punk albums of all time, and it's probably like a deep cut as far as like that goes, but yeah, I've seen it on so many lists of the best pop punk album of all time, and that's finally great to see, because I feel like lists from like 5 or 10 years ago didn't include it, and that's just crazy. Daggermouth, one of the underrated founding fathers of easycore, right when New Found Glory was doing it and getting all the credit for creating easycore, right when Set Your Goals and For Your Strong were doing their thing as well, Daggermouth was there. And the big difference with Daggermouth, they were fast, they had the breakdowns and everything like that, but their lyrics were a little bit more, I don't know if mature is the right word, but Daggermouth for the most part wasn't really singing any like happy like songs about that pop punk is known for, like, hanging out with your friends on a Friday night, oh, there's your crush at the party. That was not what Daggermouth's agenda was at all. The Descendants, again, not the first pop punk band of all time, but I mean, definitely up there. Milo Goes to College, one of the best pop punk albums of all time. And it's always an album that I'm always shocked it came out so early in the 80s or whenever it came out, because it doesn't really sound like it's that old of a record. And again, with legacy bands, go check out some of the newer songs from Descendants. I mean, they came back and put out a new album. I don't think anybody ever thought the band would come back, and the new album is not that bad. Again, I say new, it came out a few years ago, but, you know, sometimes with these legacy bands, I feel like people just want to, you know, dismiss them so much that it's, you know, that we don't even talk about them anymore. Direct hit, if you like songs about zombies, the end of the world, apocalypse, all that good stuff, then Direct Hit is the band for you. I'll put them at C. Kind of one of these smaller bands from the 2010 scene. I always wish Direct Hit would have just made a little bit more of a serious album, and I think it would have had a little bit bigger of appeal, but it just never happened. The Ergs, again, if you like classic pop punk, the Ergs is the band for you. I like a few songs here and there, so I'm going to put them right here at C. I think that makes a lot of sense. Every Avenue, I feel like, is almost on that level of Cartel, where everybody for years wasn't really aware of Every Avenue. When they were like an active band, they did okay, but I don't even think the band themselves would say that they were like a big act in the, you know, the pop punk scene and everything like that. But their one song, Tell Me I'm a Wreck, has blown up massively, I think because of TikTok and just because it's just been around for so long. So I'm gonna put Every Avenue could easily be a B for me, but I'll be fair, I'll put them in C. But yeah, Every Avenue right here, especially that beginning part, I mean, it's taken what do we got here? 4.6 million views. And let me know in the comments. I feel like a lot of people aren't even like aware or talking too much about Every Avenue.
I could have been easier on you. When you tell me I'm a wreck, you say that I'm a mess. How could you expect anything less?
With Fall Out Boy, it's a little bit different for me than it is for you if you didn't grow up in Chicago. You know, you always have that extra special connection with bands that grew up, you know, where you walk down the same streets that, you know, that Fall Out Boy grew up. I think Fall Out Boy wrote Take This to Your Grave in the neighborhood that was right near the high school I went to. So it was, I mean, how could someone in my position who liked pop punk and Fall Out Boy, you know, was so around me all the time. It was on the radio here, you know, when I was in high school. So Fall Out Boy, Alkaline Trio, Rise Against, those kind of bands, you know, I love them all. Again, I'm not going to say any like crazy hot take here with Fall Out Boy's newer stuff where they just kind of went full on pop. Do I wish they would make another pop punk album or something even kind of close to that? I know Stardust or whatever the last album is called kind of went there a little bit, but didn't go far enough, at least for me. Phoenix TX. I saw Phoenix TX on a lot of lists that were like either the best album or best pop punk album of all time. I like their song Minimum Wage, but other than that, it's really not a band I go to much. But when I do, I enjoy it. I don't want to put them at D because I do like them more than Boys Like Girls and All Time Low. So I'll put them right here at C. I think that makes a lot of sense. There's a reason I have Instagram pulled up here, because this band is Fever Dreamer. If you've never heard of them, that's okay. Most people haven't. This is a crazy situation that even when somebody told me about all this and I got all the details, I'm still confused by it. You can see here on the Instagram post, just make sure I have OBS, make sure that it's recording actually. Okay, that it is. So Fever Dreamer recorded this album that came out, I want to say it came out last year in 2023, but they recorded it 10 years ago. You can see here in the caption. And then they say, what does it say here? We couldn't share it due to circumstances out of the band's control. So I don't know what issue. I haven't really seen that anywhere public, what the issue is, why this band was shelved for 10 years. But it finally got released, and it's great. So I'm going to put the band right here at B. Such a crazy situation, and the music is good, but it flew so under the radar. So I'm going to slap them in right at B. Forever Came Calling, another band from that 2010 scene, a massively underrated band from that scene. I'll put them right here. At B, so many great songs. An album after album I thought was good, but again, it might be one of those situations where there were so many great bands coming out of the 2010 scene that some bands had to, every band couldn't be popular, right? Next up, what do we got is one of my favorites, 4 Years Strong, a great mix of easycore, a great mix of pop punk, and especially with their more recent stuff, a band that I think really can take that next step to be like a mainstream rock band. I think 4 Years Strong have it all. So I really hope for a lot more success for them. The Front Bottoms, the TikTok band, I hear a twin size mattress all the time on TikTok. I like the Front Bottoms, but I never got like too much into them, so I'll put them right here. At B, I really like some of their newer stuff actually, which nobody likes, like the song that's Everyone Blooms in Their Own Time. Like, they got some catchy stuff, so I think that's fair. The Get Up Kids, one of the best pop punk and emo albums of all time, something to write home about. Gonna slot them in right here at A because I don't think anybody would argue with that at all. Good Charlotte. Now, this might be a controversial one. I definitely was way too young to be around for, like, Good Charlotte's, like, heyday, so I don't have any, like, nostalgia tied to them at all. So I'll put them in right at C. I do remember when, like, they did that song, The River, that came out, and that album has, like, Misery, don't you know that misery likes company, da-na-na, that song. Dance Floor Anthem is on that. I'll keep them at C. I'll keep them at C. I don't want to, I'll keep them at C. What do we have? Green Day. We're going to put Green Day right here at S. Green Day has been they've been a part of my life really ever since American Idiot was when, like, it hit, like, my age group. I remember, like, Boulevard of Broken Dreams was playing on the pop stations here in Chicago that never even touched rock, let alone punk. So I remember I was like, man, that's crazy that, like, Green Day is being played on, like, pop radio stations here. And obviously, I mean, American Idiot, such a big album. Dookie. I would say, I talked earlier that Blink-182 is the best pop punk band of all time, and I do believe that. They have the best pop punk song of all time, that's Damn It, but I'm going to say that Dookie is the best pop punk album of all time. Hey Monday, if you know, you know, another underrated band that just broke up too soon, so I'm going to put them right here in C. Some great songs, but again, they broke up too soon to really, leave any kind of a mark. Hit the Lights. Hit the Lights is an interesting band because, like, their first album was kind of more on the emo side. This album is as pop punk, bright, neon as you can get. And then their last album, Summer Bones, which came out like a few years ago, is almost like an easycore album. It has like breakdowns and stuff like that. So Hit the Lights have kind of done every subgenre of pop punk that you can do. And they're a band that I listen to actually quite a lot. So I'm going to put them in B. It's another band that's kind of like, I wonder why they never got like any more popular than they became. Homegrown, the Kings of Pop. Not a band I listen to often, but this record is the album that you have to go and listen to. You're Not Alone, a great song. So I'm going to slot them right here in C. I think that makes a ton of sense. And what do we got here? A juggernaut, at least for the modern scene, for sure, Hot Mulligan. I've seen a lot of people that really love Hot Mulligan. They're definitely the biggest like modern pop punk band, at least in the last few years, like 100%. Nobody can say any different. But I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, I can't get over like the singer's voice. And that's been like the big thing. And I think that's funny because when I think of that, I feel like people did the same thing with New Found Glory, where the lead singer of New Found Glory, I feel like is always what people in their head imagine like the voice of a pop punk band being, like that kind of like higher pitched, kind of whiny, but whiny in a good way. And I feel like people think the same with Hot Mulligan. I like Hot Mulligan. I'm going to put them, I feel like I'm going to be a little bit lower than most people. I'm going to put them right here at C, so don't yell at me in the comments, because C for me, again, means I like some of your songs, I don't like some of your other songs. And I like Hot Mulligan, what they're doing for, the scene right now. Not only do I see them all over TikTok, which makes sense because that's where a lot of music, that's like the only place where rock music or emo and pop punk can even like have a chance at blowing up in the mainstream. So, I hate when people say that thing about like, oh, you're like a TikTok fan of a band. Well, yeah, I mean, if TikTok was around when, what's a cool band? If TikTok was around when like Black Flag and Minor Threat were making music, they would have been on TikTok too. I call Fives, and specifically their self-titled album, I'm not saying this as a hot take, I think this is one of the best pop punk albums of all time. And I know what you're saying. I've never heard of this band. And that's okay. A band that broke up way too soon. A band? You know, if I say that it's one of the best pop punk albums of all time, I can't be crazy. I have to put it at A. I'll play a song here in a second, but they had everything. And I feel like the problem was they came in that 2010 scene that was a little bit more like aggressive. And this album was more the Academy like is than it was like a band like The Story so far, if that makes any sense.
But no one really knows you. Not moving forward. Looks like I'm just missing you again. You have to find what you left behind. If you ever want to see me again, I never want to see you again.
So I'm going to include Bomb the Music Industry and Jeff Rosenstock all in one. I hope you're not too angry in the comments. But I remember like the first time I ever heard of Jeff Rosenstock, it was like might have been on Reddit, it might have been in like a forum or something where somebody was like, man, there's this guy in this band who are great and they just put all of their music out for free. And I would have been in high school for sure at that time. I thought that was like the punkest thing in the world. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I'm happy that younger me thought that because, you know, I got to follow Jeff and Bomb the Music Industry, you know, throughout their career. And, you know, Jeff Rosenstock might be popular right now than he's ever been, and it's just great song after great song, great album after great album. So you know, what S, right? Yeah, I thought I almost didn't put him at S. Jimmy, ooh, that got really small, geez. Jimmy Eat World. I think Jimmy Eat World is one of those bands where you're like, I know they're great, but you almost don't realize like how many great, and I mean great songs that Jimmy Eat World has. So I'm gonna put him right here at S. Everything. Jimmy Eat World are legends within the scene, and I don't really think I have to say anymore. Joyce Manor. Now, I don't know if it's going to be easy enough to tell, but Joyce Manor is one of my favorite bands. How does it look in the camera there? Okay, there we go. Yeah, Joyce Manor, one of my favorite bands. I've been around for their, you know, entire rise and everything like that. So for me, they're going to be S tier. I love Joyce Manor, and I've seen some people in the past be like, oh, like, you know, Joyce Manor, a lot of their newer stuff or more recent stuff is more mellow and it's not as intense as some of the older stuff. But like, do you really want just all of that? Like, I feel like now Joyce Manor could do that on, like, if they just put out a new album now and people would really love it. But like, Never Hungover Again, the Green album that I'm spacing on the title on, and even the new one, 40 Ounces to Fresno. Like, it was all good stuff. It might be a little bit more mellow than some of the older stuff, but like, it's still good. So this band is called Knocked Down, and I know many of you aren't going to know who this band is at all. This is an album that, when it came out, I think it got someone, I wish I could remember, so I apologize. I feel like someone put this on like one of my comments that was like, oh, this is like one of the best albums of, you know, whatever year it is. I'll check in a second here, and I'll play a song so you're not left out. But a great ska punk album that really flew under the radar, and it really fit in with that, again, in that 2000s kind of sound, like kind of drive-through records where the drums just, you know, are going like a million miles an hour, and it's just a super fast-paced skate punk record that is great.
So let the rain fall down on me, even though we disagree.
Another band that I don't think many people are going to know, but this band is called Knockout, and they put this album out on Fearless Records. I want to say it came out in like 2006 or something like that. It was definitely the 2000s, and nobody ever talks about it. Again, this is one I don't remember how it came across like my radar, but this album is great. If it's kind of more of a continuation of that like 2000s pop punk sound. If you like that, you're gonna love this album. So here's their song Breakaway. I think this is like how they opened up the album, but you're gonna know if you like it pretty quick.
What can I say? Do it anyway. You're always on the run. Why don't you stay? Talk this through.
Knuckle Puck is a band obviously from here in Chicago, and I saw them play to rooms with like, you know, 30 people, 20 people, and to see where they are now is pretty crazy. But I never really got in, like, I like the singles, I like some of the songs here and there, but as far as like full albums, I just couldn't really get into their albums. And I know a lot of people like Copacetic and stuff like that, but it never like, it never like drew me in as much as like some random songs here and there. So it's not like I can say like one Knuckle Puck album is like my favorite Knuckle Puck album, if that makes any sense. Lagwagon, I love May 16th, but yeah, not going to be a band that I really ever got into too much. I've tried too with Lagwagon, so, but it, for me, never really worked out. Less Than Jake. Now, Less Than Jake, let me add some blending here so you guys can actually see that. So Less Than Jake, I think, is with Bayside there. Maybe not like, where did I put Bayside? I put him in B, right? Or A? Oh yeah, they're put him in A. So I'm going to put Less Than Jake in A as well. A band that is one of those legacy bands that doesn't get talked about enough. I don't think many people are checking out like the new stuff from Less Than Jake, and that gets kind of like thrown under the radar, but it's all good. It's all great. Ladderman, here we go. I was worried that I didn't include them. Ladderman is such an interesting band because they have such, I feel like, a unique sound. And they had really unique lyrics because it wasn't like, there's a lot of stuff about like mental health, you know, staying inside your room and stuff like that from like a time period where it wasn't really, a lot of the songs weren't necessarily about that. So Ladderman's a band I understand why they never like got big. Like some of these other bands, I'm like, man, how did they not get, you know, way more popular? There's so many good songs. But Ladderman, I feel like Ladderman is kind of an acquired taste. And what Crucial Dudes did was took the Ladderman sound and turned up like the catchiness and turned up like the poppiness. So I think that's why, for me, right, like that's why that's a band that I like a little bit more, Crucial Dudes. Lightyear is another band from that 2010 scene, and I think this album kind of really sums up Lightyear's, because I don't know if I've ever heard this, but like this album, Afterlife, I don't think many people, if you're even aware of who the band Lightyear's is, I don't think this is your favorite album, but this is an interesting album because the entire album is basically the band singing about how their friends in the scene got way more popular and were way more successful. So it's kind of an interesting take on where a lot of pop punk is about, you know, not knowing your place in the world or maybe being a little bit angry at the world. And they kind of turn it around and it's really like introspective. And I thought it was super interesting. So I really like this album. I have it on vinyl somewhere over there. I think I have all their albums on vinyl now that I think about it. But Lightyears is a great band, so I'm going to put them in at B. So that might be shocking to some people who are aware of the band, but and they fit kind of that more, I would say, that 2000s sound. Like they were kind of oddly placed, or not oddly placed, it just, you know, happened where they were around in the 2010s, where I think if they were around in, you know, 03, 04 or something like that, they would have been way more popular. What do we got here? Oh, one of my favorites, a local band here as well, Lucky Boys Confusion. Yeah, I think this is their best album because, I mean, I picked it, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But yeah, I'm going to put them here at B. Such an interesting band because they did, you know, arguably you could even say like they're not even pop punk. They're probably one of the few bands that probably fits like, they're just like a rock band. Like, that's what they are. Hey Driver, Atari, and some great songs. If you haven't had a chance, it might be like a little bit Chicago bias here because, you know, when I was getting into like punk rock and stuff like that in high school, I don't know if anybody else does it, but you kind of just gravitate to the bands that like are from Chicago, right? Or from your hometown. So Lucky Boys Confusion have been in my life, you know, forever, since like 2010-ish, so they, you know, like a decade plus, and a super underrated band in the grand scheme of things as well. So this one might be a tad bit controversial. Now I know you're saying, Mike, look at that F slot. You didn't put anybody there. You haven't even put anybody in E. I know what you're talking about, but I don't think it's not that bad. It's not as bad as you remember it. And as I've said 1,000 times on the channel, if you look at those comments under any of the pop punk era Machine Gun Kelly like music videos, everyone's like, wow, this is so nostalgic. I'm glad someone's bringing back rock and roll or emo or punk or the sound of the early 2000s. And if you don't believe me, go check out those comments because I'm not lying. So I always have to defend that album a little bit in that sense. But I'll put it in here in D. It's not an album I go back to at all. Emo Girl, I remember. And then, Mainstream Sellout. Like the song where he's calling out the scene. Again, it wasn't bad. And in fairness, it's probably the most mainstream pop punk album that we've had in a very, very long time. What do we got next? Oh, here we go. Man Overboard. Now, I feel like Man Overboard gets kind of remembered and almost as like a meme, and everybody always brings up the Defend Pop Punk, like logo and all of that stuff. I had that hoodie. I think everybody in the 2010s did. So I don't want to hear anybody in the comments being like, "Oh, Man Overboard was so cringe." That Defend Pop Punk logo was at one point like the coolest thing in the scene, and don't let anybody ever tell you that it wasn't, because they're just lying. There's, every era of the scene has a bunch of cringy stuff. Now, Man Overboard was like the pop punk band. You know what I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking between A and B. I think Man Overboard was a big part of my youth. So, for me, I'm going to put him in A. I think my band in high school, one of the songs that we always kind of practiced was Love Your Friends, Die Laughing. So, I mean, God, I have to put it in here. And this album had Rare was a great opener. It had Atlas. What did it have? It had Spun or Spin. There's so many good songs on this album. Probably my favorite Man Overboard album. And there's so much more than just the Defend pop punk band. And the lead singer Zach has been putting out stuff. I can't remember the band. I'll put something on screen now, but like they've been putting out, it's him singing and it's pop punk. So I don't want to like diminish the other members of this like other project, but I mean, it's him singing and it's pop punk mostly. There's some like techno kind of stuff in there, but not on the album that I'm putting on screen right now in post. Like it's more Man Overboard. So, but it's good. So, I mean, definitely check it out. Next up is what I think is one of the most underrated pop punk and emo bands of like the last 10 years, especially this album, Blisters in the Pit of My Heart. Martha, I'm going to slot them in right with A. I got to see them when they played in Chicago with Jeff Rosenstock, I believe, and it was great to see them because I don't know where they're from, but I know they're not from the United States. Great album, has some bright poppy moments, but has some real introspective emo moments. What else could you want? Now this, I think, is going to be a hot take. I think this album, the self-titled by Masked Intruder, is one of the best pop-punk albums of all time. I feel like a lot of people just dismiss this band because of the entire gimmick and everything, and I know that might not be for everybody, but I feel like it also gets dismissed as just being like a Ramones core album, and I never understood why Ramones core was kind of laughed at. I think maybe because it's like, oh, like, 3-chord or maybe even a 4th chord, punk song. Like, oh my God, they're just singing about love and stuff. And I always hate the just singing about love criticism, because most human created art is about love. Movies, poems, books, songs. So that argument never makes any sense to me. But yeah, I'm going to put this album and the band specifically right here at A. I don't know if that'll be a hot take for some people watching. And I think their album, the self-titled one, like from start to finish, just great pop punk after pop punk. But I really like the Wish You Were Mine song, because I don't think many pop punk bands would have the guts to make like this kind of oldie, kind of classic kind of rock song and throw it in on their records.
All I wanna say to you is that I wish you were mine.
Now we have Mest, a band that is from Illinois. I don't know what part they are from, but I don't have that same connection with Mest that I did with other bands. I mean, standing on the rooftop, listening to punk rock, da-na-na-na-na-na. So that, but for me, Mest, I haven't listened to them enough, so I'll keep them here at D just to be fair. But for me, that I haven't gotten into them too much. If there's a great Mest song that I need to check out, please leave it in the comments, and I will. Another underrated band, Midtown. I know Midtown finally came back after all the Cobra Starship years, but I think the first time I ever heard Midtown, they were in Madden, and their song Give It Up, right? Yes, their song Give It Up was on there, and I got hooked on Midtown, so I'm going to put them in as B. And they were a band too, like on this album or on their last album. The one with Give It Up was a little bit experimental as far as like pop punk goes, and I feel like nobody ever like really talks about Midtown either, so I'll give them a shout out here. Bo, Modern Baseball. Now, I know a lot of people love Modern Baseball, but between them and Title Fight, those are the two bands that everybody wants to reunite. I like Modern Baseball, but do I like them as much as everybody else does? Everybody in the comments says I look like the guitarist. Yeah, not the main singer, but the other singer who's in Slaughter Beach Dog. I don't have my glasses near me, but Look at any one of my videos where I wear glasses. I feel like I get that comment all the time. And I got it on like, well, I guess this makes sense. Go look at my video I did on Mobo, and you'll see that comment. I'll put them at B. I like Modern Baseball. The thing that Modern Baseball did that made them stand out is they were one of the first bands to really, in that 2010 scene, social media was really a factor for the scene for like the first time, like Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff was blowing up. And Modern Baseball was like the first one to sing about like Instagram DMs or Twitter or Facebook statuses and stuff like that. So I always have to say that when I talk about Modern Baseball, because it's an important thing in the scene. And I remember reading like a review. Somebody was like, oh my God, Modern Baseball singing about social media, that'll never last, and it'll be like cringy to look back on in 10 years. Well, all those platforms are still around. Anyway, Motion City soundtrack. Hot take, My Dinosaur Life is the best Motion City soundtrack album. And Motion City soundtrack is great, and I'm going to put them at A, another underrated band. In my opinion, I know like Modern Baseball is like a band that people are like aware of and stuff like that, but underrated, I think, in the grand scheme of things. What do we got next? MXPX. Speaking of a band that has like a ton of music, MXPX is like a million songs. I'm going to put MXPX, I'm going to put it right here at C. I can't remember the last time when did the last time I listened? Ooh, here's a hot take. From the album, no, I don't know what the album's called, but the MXPX song titled Far Away. The land that's too far away. I like that song, and I think that's like a deep cut, especially if you're a fan of of MXPX. My Chemical Romance, another big band, a band that we're all waiting around for their new album. They came back, gave us Foundations of Decay, and then dipped. So I know we're running out of room here. I'll have to zoom out in a second, but it's like an A-B situation. I'm gonna go with B. Yeah, I still get comments on my tier list that I did with of like all the My Chemical Romance albums. I feel like it hit the algorithm and just stayed there. It's like a short I have if you want to find it on the channel. I still get random comments. I'm like, who's commenting on this old video? And every time it's the My Chemical Romance tier list video. Ooh, here we go. Neck Deep. I don't know why this is grayscaled out. I'm sure I did that for a reason, but I don't know why it is. Neck Deep. Man, I was at the Sub T in Chicago, and I believe it was the first, I don't want to say it was the first US show, that doesn't make sense, but it was the first Chicago show that Neck Deep played, and it was like right off the back of A Part of Me and like the first two EPs. I got great memories of Neck Deep. I'm gonna slot him here at A. Who else was on that show? Neck Deep mixtapes? I feel like am I talking about mixtapes? I am talking about. Did I skip mixtapes? I think I did. I did skip mixtapes. Look at that. Look, isn't that funny how your brain works? I was like, man, I knew I was supposed to talk about them. So ignore that. I'll leave it in. I won't even make a cut. But mixtapes, again, I think I've said it for a few bands now. Underrated band from that 2010 scene. So many good songs, and they were just a band that broke up too soon. I don't even know what happened to them, but they broke up, and they've been like super silent ever since then. So where were we? We were at Neck Deep. Hold on, let me get everything back together. Okay. Boom, Newfound Glory. How can you not like Newfound Glory? I feel like you have to put them in here at A. I feel like the only like big thing with the Newfound Glory again is like if you don't like the singer's voice. But they have so many great songs, hit or miss, all that stuff. So I don't think it's like, a crazy hot take to put them up, that far. So this is probably a band that not many of you have heard of, and probably the newest band on the list, but great pop punk if you like that 2000s kind of style of fast-paced pop punk. We'll throw them right. We'll go and see right here. They don't have too many songs right now, but solid pop punk band and a smaller band I wanted to kind of put on the list so you guys can go check out. Next up, Origami Angel. I always liked Origami Angel. They always do their newer band in the scene. They're always kind of doing new things to kind of like test what, can still be labeled as emo and pop punk, and, change it enough, but like where fans aren't, screaming or anything about it. So for Oso and this album, Basking in the Glow, I've talked about it on the channel before, that this album, I give its own genre, summer emo. Every summer that it comes along, or really more spring, I always put this album on because it lets me know that summer, is right around the corner. I don't know what it is about it. The album just sounds bright, fun, sunny, just sounds like spring or summer, and we'll play a little bit here.
Now I know what I want. I've been singing this song all month. I wanted something. Yeah, this song's like nothing.
I don't know if many people would consider Pale Waves to be a pop punk band, but on this album, I think they definitely are. My Mind Makes Noises. They have that great lyric where it's, I would give you my body, but I'm not sure if you want me. Oh, I don't think it gets any better than that. Definitely have to check out some of their newer stuff, so I'll put them right here nicely in C. What do we got next? Paramore, and I think the big shift with Paramore was the After Laughter album. Like, I mean, it's like an 80s like dance record, and I'm sure the band was even wondering if like, man, I wonder if like people are really gonna still, you know, like us if we go like this route. And I think it's one of the, you could argue it's the band's best album. I won't make that kind of a hot take on this video. Pennywise, F Authority, obviously. And, you know, I'm going to put them in a C simply for the fact that on their one album where they didn't have their longtime singer, the song was Revolution, and it was in like one of the WWE games. So I heard that song probably about 100 million times. So just for that, I'll put them right there at C. Hold on, let me edit this a little bit. And Pup. Pup's a great band. Morbid Stuff, the self-titled, all that good stuff. Yeah, I'll put them at B. I kind of have to be like in the mood for Pup, get a little bit angry, get a little bit, you know, retrospective. So the Ramones was that band I was talking about earlier when we were discussing the Buzzcocks. The Ramones have said themselves that they were a fast-paced pop punk band, and I think that's the oldest like reference we ever have of a band being like, yeah, we're, you know, a pop punk band. If you're the first pop punk band, I feel like I have to put you at A. And let me know if you want to see a video about like a deep dive into the Ramones, because I feel like so many people are like, yeah, the Ramones, of course, like it's the Ramones, I know about the Ramones, but how many people have like sat down and actually listened to like 3 or 4 Ramones albums? I don't think many people. Real Friends, another band that had a massive impact on me. Obviously, you know, from Chicago, they're from the burbs. I saw them at like Centennial Lanes play to like, you know, less than like 100 kids when they were coming up. And got to give credit to a band that, you know, can keep being a band after you change your lead singer. Like that's such a big, massive, crazy thing to do. And like, it's probably a scary thing to do, like if you're in a band, because I mean, I don't think it's, a hot take to say that like a band's lead singer is literally and figuratively the face and voice of the band. And this might be a hot take. I think all the new stuff is better. Even like with the new album that just came out, it's a little bit more intense, a little bit more hardcore. Not like hardcore, but like more hardcore than like any other Real Friends album, if that makes any sense. So definitely check that one out. Rufio, So Above Me. Rufio's like a C, not a band I go back to often, but when I do, I enjoy it. Probably like the quintessential like 2000s. Like, what does 2000s pop punk sound like? Like 02 or 03 or 04. It's Rufio. Say Anything, boy, that last album. Go check out my review of the last album. I'm not a big fan of concept albums and stuff like that, and I know the lead singer Max has said like on this entire like album's like a big concept album. I really like the self-titled, and my hot take would probably be that Alive with the Glory of Love is one of the best pop punk songs of all time. Yeah. Seaway, a band that kind of like fell off the face of the planet. I don't know what's going on with Seaway. I hope we see them soon. This album came out in 2020 when we were all dealing with a bunch of stuff. So it's not like a surprise that it, you know, flew under the radar and everything like that. But Big Vibe is a great song. Probably the band's best song in my opinion. Mrs. David or Mr. David, Mrs. Davis. Yeah, it's something like that. I don't know. Set Your Goals, one of the founding fathers of Easycore, the Big Four. Set Your Goals, A Day to Remember, 4 Year Strong, and New Found Glory, right? Yeah, and then maybe like Daggermouth is like sidebar of that. But Set Your Goals out of like the Big Four was always the band that I never got into like too much. So I don't want to put them at D. Like I like Set Your Goals. I like the album that nobody likes, that has like Certain on it, that has Burning at Both Ends. That is my favorite Set Your Goals album. And I know some people are going to be like, dude, you're insane. But it's the truth. I'm not lying. I think that is my favorite Say Anything album, or Set Your Goals album. Simple Plan. I remember a kid that I went to grammar school with tried to be like so cool and so edgy We were hanging out at like a friend's house playing like Halo 2 or Halo 3, maybe. Probably would have been Halo 3 if my years are correct. And he would just like have in his headphones, and this was years after the song had come out, right? And we just had like a CD player and had like Welcome to Your Life on repeat. Not even like the album, just the song. So shout out to you, man. I hope you're doing all right after all these years. But set your goals, I'll put at C. I mean, didn't I kind of do that with Good Charlotte? Yeah, I think that makes wow. No, I'll keep him at C. I thought about it for a second there. Sincere Engineer, probably more on like the punk rock side, but you know, pop punk, emo, punk rock, it's all the same thing anyway. I love Sincere Engineer. Again, probably like some like Chicago bias, but I'm gonna put him right here in A. Ooh, so this is kind of an interesting one. So this is a band called Sludgeworth. This album came out. It did not come out recently. Sometimes Spotify, like I hate when like you get like a reissue and they put like the current, like they'll put 2024, but it's not. When did this album come out? Let me see if I can do this off screen really quick. You loser of the year. Oh no. Dude, Google has become something over the past, like with this AI change and everything. So this album came out in 1995 on the famous or infamous Lookout Records. And they're a Chicago band, or Red Scare like put it out. They're from the Midwest, I know that for sure. And I just wanted to bring this up literally because I have this story. The album is good. I'm going to put it, I'll probably put it at C. Yeah, I am running out of room, but I'll put it at C. But my favorite story about this band, so Sludgeworth, kind of like a cult classic band. Like they definitely weren't popular even for their time. So they reunite and they get to play Riot Fest. Riot Fest, a big festival, obviously, that happens here in Chicago, big punk festival. And I saw that they got one of the later times. I was like, wow, that's so cool. Later, you play later in the festival. That means you're a big band. So this band was a cult classic band. It never really was popular. They finally come back, reunite, and they play at Riot Fest. And what band do you think was opposite of them on the schedule that fans had to choose from? They were put up against the Foo Fighters. I always felt so bad for Sludgeworth when I saw that. I was like, dude, can you think about that? Being like a band that was like not that very popular. You come back, you're playing Riot Fest, this big punk rock festival in your hometown, and you're up against the Foo Fighters. We're kind of on a run of Chicago bands. I swear I didn't do that on purpose, but the Smoking Popes was never a band, out of all like the Chicago like punk bands, never really got into them too much. I'm going to put them right there at D. I'll try to have it. There we go. So I can have it in the screen. We're getting so long here. But yeah, a band that I just never really got into too much. Like the hits are good. My favorite song from the band is the one about like the postman. Gosh, what is that song called? No way. The song was It's a Long Day. That's the song I'm thinking of. It's a long day. It didn't sound anything like that. But yeah, Something Corporate, another big, popular band in the scene. I once did I was in acting school. I know, art school. I know. I can feel you judging me. But I was with the scene partner, and we had to talk about people that were like influential to us. And she said Andrew, was it Andrew McMahon? I'm pretty sure it is, right? Andrew McMahon, Something Corporate. Yeah, so she said Andrew McMahon. I was like the only person in that. I know for a fact I was the only other person who knew that. And then we had our scene to rehearse, and we came in like the next day. And, we're going back and forth. I think I started it off, so I'm going blah, 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 blah. I'm waiting for her line. And she forgets it. I mean, no big deal. This is like acting 101. This isn't like, anything major. Forgets it, nothing, blah, blah, blah. We go back, so I have to start again. All right, teacher's like, all right, take it from the top. So I'm going, boom, boom, boom. Forgets her line again, blah, blah, blah. And, teacher's getting a little bit aggravated. Now I'm starting to think, I'm like, oh, like, she's either, like, too nervous and not here at all, or just, like, all the information is gone, or she didn't study, one of those two. So long story short, we keep going back and forth, and then she just doesn't know it, and the teacher gets mad. And then he's like, I can't remember her name. And the teacher's like, did you, like, look over the script at all? Like, at all? And she's like, no. And then left the class, and I never saw her again. So shout out to you. You were nice to me, so we got along pretty well. But I hope you're doing well wherever you are. But that's like, when I think of Something Corporate, that literally always plays in my mind. Like, it's one of those memories that I can clear as day, can see it right now. But I don't think she would like this, because I don't want to go D because I like, I Woke Up in a Car and stuff like that, and Punk Rock Princess, but never a band that I really go back to. So I'll slot them in at C here. Stand Atlantic. I like Stand Atlantic. I know they kind of changed up their sound on some of their newer stuff, but this album here, Coffee at Midnight, great song. So I'll slot them right here at C. What else do we got? What's next? Ooh, State Champs. So this is a big one. Again, let me edit on the fly here so you guys can see it. So State Champs, I do think Elevated is one of the best pop punk songs of all time. So if I say that, it's not like I can put them at F or E or D. Yeah, I'll go with C. I'm going to go with C. I feel like that might be a little bit of a hot take, but ooh, then we got a juggernaut from the 2010 scene, The Story So Far. I love The Story So Far. I like the new album. I'm going to put them right here at A. I think it's so interesting that on the new album, like the album is about grief mostly, and I think it's so interesting that you would figure on like an album like that, I feel like a lot of bands would go that slow around, have a lot of ballads and stuff like that. But for The Story So Far to still make it a like fast-paced, intense pop-punk album, it's just that this album isn't really about like breakups or anything like that, or it's more about grief and how you deal with that and overcoming that and the loss of a loved one. And I think it's such a beautiful record. I know some people haven't really liked it or vibed with it and stuff like that, but I would give it another chance if you only listen to like Watch It Go. I think the two acoustic songs are great. I think it's one of the best Story So Far albums, and just I think the entire, like, I don't want to say concept, but how the band approached the album I thought was really unique and really interesting. Such Gold, a band from that 2010 scene that I think is underrated. I know I said that for a few bands on here, but I really do mean that, because that was the scene I grew up in, so that's the scene that I'm nostalgic for, right? All the bands from the 2010s, because that was like when I was in high school and college. So, your Good Charlottes, your Simple Plans, your Bowling for Soups, you can have them. I have zero nostalgia attached to those bands, but I do for bands like Such Gold, who came back after being like gone, and we haven't heard anything from them in years, but they recently, like the past few months, like put out a single. So hopefully we get some more new music from the band. If there's one song that you should check out from Such Gold, it's Storyteller. Such Gold was an interesting band because they were like too hardcore for the pop punk kids, but they were too pop punk for the hardcore kids, right? Does that make any sense? They were too pop punk for the hardcore kids and too hardcore for the pop punk kids. Yes, I feel like that makes sense. So like they never really, there was no way to slot them in like with the bands they toured with and everything like that. So a great band, definitely check them out. Another juggernaut, Taking Back Sunday. Taking Back Sunday, besides like the hits and everything, not a band I go back to too much, but yeah, I'll put them at B. I mean, sometimes when I'm on a jam, I throw on some Taking Back Sunday Q without the E, and I'm ready to go. I realize I missed Sum 41, but I'm gonna leave it in like it is. I'm not gonna do any fancy edits. Everybody makes mistakes. But Sum 41 recently played their last show in the U.S., I believe. Great band. I have so many memories of like singing along. Again, not nostalgic memories, but like nostalgic for me, right? Like I remember singing along with all my friends to like Fat Lip. When I got like my first car on like the tape like adapter to iPod, if anybody remembers that, the cassette. Like my car was one of those cars that was just had the cassette, it had nothing else. So like Bluetooth, of course, was out of the question. CDs were out of the question because it didn't have a CD player, it had a cassette player. So we had the adapter to the iPad. So I have great memories of like blasting Fat Lip and driving around Chicago. Taylor Acorn, one of the newer artists again, but I really like her EP or album, Certified Depressant. I can't remember which is which, but we're going to play a song here in a second. We'll put it right here at B. And I remember like when I played some of the songs, especially like Famous Last Words, to a lot of my friends, they're like, man, this sounds like classic pop punk from like the 2000s. So if you want some of that stuff, different though, it's more polished. It's not in the same vein of like Homegrown or Rufio and bands like we talked about like that, but I'll let you listen and you can judge for yourself.
Whispered her famous last words with goodbye to her. There's nothing you can say, she's gonna learn it the hard way. Catch her on the other side.
I wonder how many comments were there that I missed the starting line. I labeled them as the starting line in my document, in my Word doc, and obviously it did alphabetical order and stuff like that. So the starting line, I'm going to put the starting line at... I'll put the starting line at A. One of my favorite starting line songs is Greg's Last Day, and if you ever had like a friend move away when you were like a kid, that song just means so much to you, and I had that like experience, so that's why I love the band, and specifically like I love that song. Teenage Bottle Rocket, legends in the Ramonecore scene for sure. My favorite Ramones core Teenage Bottle Rocket song is actually Done With Love, and I feel like that's like a deep cut. I feel like not many people really talk about this song. Tonight Alive, I think, is a underrated band that doesn't really get talked about too much. I mean, even on this album, they had Mark Hoppus on Thank You and Goodnight, right? Wasn't it the song Thank You and Goodnight? Do, 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 do. And that was like at a time where like Blink wasn't back yet, I think. Maybe they were. But like Mark Hoppus wasn't doing anything like too much in pop punk. And shout out to Mark Hoppus. He's done like a lot of guest spots on like different like various pop punk stuff. And here too, shout out to Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy. He did he was on All Your Heart, which is on this album from the band Transit. I like Transit. I feel like a lot of people didn't like their last album. I think it was like Young New England or something like that, but I'm going to put them right there at C. Turnover, I mean, Peripheral Vision, one of the best emo albums of all time, one of the best shoegaze albums of all time for sure. I mean, it introduced an entire generation to shoegaze, and you gotta give credit to Turnover for... I'm going to put them at C because I'll be honest, I feel like a lot of people pretend this is really the only stuff that I listen to from Turnover. Maybe some of the older stuff like Flicker and Fade and Most of the Time, that's some good stuff too. But what I was going to say is shout out to Turnover for not getting sick of Peripheral Vision, because I feel like a band in their place where like most people love this album and just this one album from your band, that could probably take a toll on you. So shout out to Turnover for that. The Unlovables, another Ramones core band that I feel like nobody talks about, but it's solid, fun Ramones core stuff. And if you like that style of pop punk, you're going to like that album, trust me. Water Parks, a band that I never got into, a band, I don't even know if I can name you a song by Water Parks, but they did pop up on a lot of pop punk like lists and best like modern bands and stuff like that. But I don't know, let me know in the comments what song I should check out from the band. We Are the In Crowd, Weird Kids, another band that I would say just an underrated band from the 2010s, more on like the bright side of pop punk, but they did get to play when we were young this year, so shout out to them for that. Ooh, With the Punches, a band that was around in the 2010s, but that was like they were not a popular band. I don't think that's like a hot take to say, but they came back in like 2022 and released this album, and I think it's very good. I'll play a song in a second. I'm running out of room, but we'll put them at C right here. Yeah, Almost Everything from 2022 is a great song.
And cleaning up this mess, nearly scared myself to death. Now I'm getting better. Started making excuses less. Tried to focus on my breath. Now I'm getting better. There's a lesson to be learned somewhere along the way.
I know I've talked a lot about the 2010 scene. The Wonder Years, probably the biggest band from that scene. The Wonder Years are S tier for me. I've seen them a bunch of times, love the band, and I really like their last album, The Hum Goes On Forever. A lot of people are like, man, pop punk can't be mature or, anything like that, but I feel like The Hum Goes On Forever is like what the foundation should be for a mature pop punk album, because it's the lyrics and everything that the album is dealing with is about, kids and looking at kind of like the darkness that's around you, that's happening in the world, but, still choosing to, go forward because you want to be like that, beacon of hope for your children. And I think the album does that beautifully, and also it gives you like the pop punkiness of the Wonder Years. I think is it Low Tide is one of the best Wonder Years songs of all time. Okay, we're in the final stretch here. Yellow Card, my hot take with Yellow Card, I'll go You know, I'm going to go with A because I think the best Yellowcard album is When You're Through Thinking, Say Yes. Another band kind of in that legacy band category of, you know, you want to listen to the hits that you're nostalgic for, but trust me, check out some of the newer stuff. You're going to like it just as much. Yumi at 6, a band that like last year just said that they were going to stop being a band. This album, the next one, and then like the one that had like, was it Sinners Never Sleep or something like that? Those were like the most like pop punky kind of in the scene albums, and they kind of went a little bit more pop. I'm going to put them at C right there. We're running out of room. And then the last band 100. Dude, it better be 100. I'm looking at, I have everything numbered. The Word doc or the Google doc can't lie to me. Band 100, Youth Fountain. There is a reason I'm happy that this is Band 100. I think this is one of the best pop punk albums of all time. I said it. I really do mean it, actually. It's a great mix of like everything that pop punk does. It has some nostalgia in there, but it doesn't lean on the nostalgia too much. It sounds like newer pop punk. I like the singer's voice. It's a little bit more gritty. It's not like that clean kind of vocal that I think pop punk is a little bit probably more known for than any like grittiness. And there's some screaming. There's some intensity. The album is titled Together in Lonesome and has a lot of those kind of, you know, themes about feeling alone or feeling lost in life, and it just does it great in a time where I feel like it's just song after song and, you know, 30 seconds that go viral on TikTok. To come across an album that, you know, blew me away when I wasn't expecting it, it was a real big treat for me. So for me, Youth Fountain, and of course, you know, their other stuff is good as well, but like this is the album that you should definitely check out. And for me, Youth Fountain goes right here at A, and that's it. The tier list is done. 100 pop punk bands. So I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun going in and trying to pick these 100 bands, figuring out like what I wanted to talk more about, what I didn't want to talk about too much, what songs to play and stuff like that. So I had a lot of fun putting it together, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as well. Please like the video. It really helps me out, really helps the channel out. Please subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for watching.